Hello, and welcome, sleepy scholars. You found your way to History Hypnopedia, a quiet place where history is told slowly, gently, and without any need to stay awake. If today has left your mind busy or restless, you can let it soften now. There's nothing here you need to remember, and no story you need to follow perfectly. Tonight's story will unfold at its own pace. You're free to drift, to listen lightly, or to fall asleep at any moment. Tonight, we're going to meet a thief, or at least a man who became famous as one. But this is not a story of danger. There are no chases here, no raised voices, no urgency. This is a story about how legends form, how names grow larger than lives, and how sometimes the story itself does most of the work. Long before Adam Worth ever became a name in the newspapers, people already loved the idea of a certain kind of criminal. Not a violent one, not a frightening one, but a gentleman thief. Someone clever rather than forceful, polite rather than cruel. A figure who moved quietly through the world, leaving behind stories instead of fear. This kind of criminal existed more comfortably in imagination than in reality. He reassured people that crime could be tidy, that rules could still be followed, that intelligence mattered more than harm. By the time Adam Worth entered public awareness, the world was already ready for him. Adam Worth was born in the mid-19th century. Far from glamour or intrigue, there was nothing especially remarkable about his early life. No dramatic signs. No childhood prophecy. He was not born into luxury, nor into villainy. He was simply observant, quiet, patient, and patient people often disappear into the background until a story pulls them forward. Adam Worth did not set out to become a criminal. In fact, his earliest years suggest something else entirely. Like many young men of the 19th century, he was searching for stability, for opportunity, for a place to belong. As a teenager, Worth served briefly in the American Civil War. Not in any celebrated way. Not long enough to build a career or reputation. When the war ended, it left behind many people who were suddenly unanchored. Young, mobile, and uncertain how to fit back into ordinary life. Worth was one of them. He drifted. And drifting in a growing industrial world often meant discovering how easily systems could be bent. Banks relied on paper. Employers relied on assumptions. Cities relied on anonymity. Worth noticed these things. He learned that confidence could open doors, that patience could outlast suspicion, that no one looked twice at a man who appeared calm and respectable. Crime for Worth was less about desire and more about method. It was not hunger or desperation that guided him, but curiosity and a growing sense that rules were flexible if you understood how they were written. Worth moved between countries and cities, working small jobs, learning how systems worked, watching how people trusted, and how they assumed. His early crimes, such as they were modest. No grand robberies, no theatrical flair. But newspapers would change that. At some point, Adam Worth's name appeared in print. And once a name appears in print, it begins a life of its own. Small acts became larger. Ordinary deceptions became clever schemes. Quiet movements became master plans. Journalists needed characters. And Adam Worth fit neatly into a shape they already loved. They called him brilliant. They called him elegant. They called him dangerous, even when his actions suggested something far more restrained. Each retelling added a layer. Each article smoothed the edges. And slowly, a legend formed. If Adam Worth is remembered for any single act, it is the theft of a painting. A portrait by Thomas Gainsborough. But even here, the story is quieter than the legend. The painting was taken without violence, without damage, without spectacle. Worth did not sell it. He did not destroy it. He kept it. For years. Almost as if the painting mattered less than the idea of possessing it. By the time Adam Worth took the Gainsborough painting, he was already well practiced in restraint. The portrait was removed carefully, protected from damage, stored rather than displayed. Worth did not ransom it. He did not threaten anyone with its loss. He simply kept it. When asked later why, he offered no grand explanation. Some believed it was vanity. Others thought it was affection for art. But the simplest answer may be the quietest one. The painting had become a companion, a symbol of a life lived between worlds, legal and illegal, visible and unseen. The press, of course, preferred something more romantic. And so the painting became proof that Adam Worth was not merely a thief, but a connoisseur. In the public imagination, this became proof of refinement, taste, a criminal who appreciated art. In reality, it was simply a man holding on to something longer than expected. But the story was irresistible. Long before the famous painting, Adam Worth was already practicing a quieter kind of theft. One of his most repeated schemes involved something almost dull: bank deposits. Worth discovered that by opening accounts under assumed names, and depositing small sums across multiple institutions. He could move money slowly, almost invisibly. No alarms, no confrontations. Sometimes he would withdraw funds before the paperwork ever caught up. Other times, he simply let the accounts sit, growing interest, becoming ordinary. What made this remarkable was not the amount, which was modest, but the patience. Worth was willing to wait weeks, months, even years. In a world that expected criminals to hurry, his slowness made him difficult to notice. When banks finally realized something was wrong, the trail had usually cooled. This was not brilliance in the dramatic sense. It was diligence. And newspapers would later mistake diligence for genius. As time passed, Adam Worth was no longer just a person. He was a headline, a comparison, a metaphor. Other criminals were measured against him. Fictional characters were inspired by him. Some would later claim he inspired the great fictional masterminds of literature. But inspiration is a generous word. What truly inspired writers was not Worth himself, but the idea of him, a shadowy figure, a mind rather than a menace. The real man became increasingly irrelevant. The story was doing the work now. Eventually, patience runs out. Not because of drama, but because time notices everything. Adam Worth was arrested not through confrontation, but through accumulation. Too many names, too many small inconsistencies. His imprisonment was unremarkable. No daring escape, no final speech. He aged quietly. He read. He waited. And during this time, the legend outside the prison walls continued to grow. Stories traveled faster than the man himself ever had. Behind the legend, Adam Worth's life was quieter, less successful, more constrained. He was arrested. He was imprisoned. He grew older. There were no grand escapes. No final triumphs. No moment where the myth caught up with reality. And yet, the myth continued anyway. Because stories do not require permission from facts. It's worth pausing here and asking why figures like Adam Worth remain interesting. Why did people prefer the legend to the reality? Perhaps because the legend was comforting. A criminal who followed rules, who avoided harm, who valued intelligence and restraint. In turning a flawed person into a polished story, society softened its own fears. Crime became folklore. Danger became drama. And the night felt a little less threatening. In the end, Adam Worth did not steal much at all. not compared to his reputation, not compared to his fictional descendants. What he truly acquired was a place in the imagination, a name that traveled farther than he ever did, a story that lived longer than the facts beneath it. And perhaps that was the real theft, not of objects, but of attention. The truth about Adam Worth is this: he was careful, he was patient, he was observant, but he was not larger than life. That quality was added later, by ink, by rumor, by repetition. The gentleman thief did not steal loudly. He did not steal often. But the story of him was stolen again and again. Tonight, as you rest, you don't need to decide what Adam Worth truly was. A criminal, a curiosity, a misunderstanding. You can simply notice how easily stories grow, and how gently they can be laid down again. The legend doesn't need to be solved. It doesn't need to be judged. It can rest, just as you can. And now, just as Adam Worth slowly faded from the center of his own story, you may have faded too, letting the details drift past, the edges soften, and sleep arrive without effort. History has many rooms, and this is just one of them. For now, you can let the door close softly. This has been History Hypnopedia. Rest well.